Assalamu alaikum. My name is Saad bin Chaid and I am a student of Rehan School and I am a potential level student. Today I want to talk with Miles about a fascination topic for the backbone of early civilization, from building home and boats to make tools and fire. Wood played a huge role in human history. In this live discussion, we will explore how wood helped ancient civilization grow, survive, and develop culture around the world. Let's begin with Miles. Uh,
Uh, hey there, I'm Miles, and you are?
Hello, Miles. Today my topic is wood, the backbone of early civilization. So my first topic is, why is wood called the backbone of early civilization?
Wood, huh? Going
Yeah.
deep on the basics. It's basically the first real multi-tool. You had fuel for fire, a way to build actual shelter, and the way to get food, like spears and bows. Without it, we're just shivering in the open. Think it's the most important one, or was stone more the vibe?
How did ancient human first discover the uses of wood?
Probably just by accident and curiosity. Imagine some early humans seeing a fallen tree and realizing it could be a wall, or finding a branch that's just the right shape for a digger. It was a slow burn of, hey, this works moments. You want to hear about the weird ways they actually shaped it?
So, what were the earliest wooden tools used by humans?
The basics started with the heavy hitters. Spears and digging sticks were the OG tools. Simple, effective, and got the job done. Then they got into things like handles for stone axes, which basically turned a basic rock into a power tool. You're thinking of something specific like hunting gear or building stuff?
How did wood help people survive in ancient times?
It was the difference between barely making it and actually thriving. Fire kept them warm and scared off predators, and wooden shelters meant they didn't have to just huddle in caves. Plus, the tools they made gave them a massive advantage in the hunt. Pretty much everything they did to stay alive revolved around it. Ever wonder how they actually kept those tools from breaking?
Why is wood important for making fire?
Because it's the perfect fuel. It burns steady, it's easy to find, and once you get a good log going, it holds the heat. It was basically the first battery for early humans. Did you know they actually had to figure out which types of wood burned the best?
How did wood improve transportation in early civilization?
That's where things actually got interesting. First, it was just logs being rolled under heavy stuff to move things. Then someone had the genius idea to carve those logs into rollers, and eventually that leads us straight to the wheel. It changed everything. Suddenly you could move way more gear without killing your back. You want to know about the first boats too?
So, what types of homes were built using wood?
Pretty much every kind of early home. You had basic lean toes made of branches and leaves. Then you moved into log cabins, and eventually the huge pillars and beams for the first real cities. It was essentially the Lego set of the ancient world. Ever wonder how they kept the rain out of those early spots?
So, how did wood contribute to farming and agriculture?
It was the engine that drove the whole thing. You had wooden plows breaking the soil and fences to keep animals in. Even the first irrigation systems used wooden troughs to move water. Basically, if it wasn't made of wood, it wasn't getting planted. You want to hear about the first wooden tools they used for harvesting?
Why were wooden boards important in history?
They basically turned a messy world into a structured one. Once they figured out how to flatten wood into boards, they could make floors, tables, and doors. It was the jump from just piling things up to actually designing a space. Pretty wild that a simple flat surface Actually, we're almost out of time on this call. We're hitting that 5 minute limit. You can always hit me up later to finish the wood deep dive, though. Catch you later.
How did forests influence where people still?
I'd love to get into that, but we're actually just about out of time on this call. Give me a shout later, and we can pick up right where we left off. See ya.
Uh, what role did wood play in trade and business?
I really wish I could tell you, but we're totally out of time on this call. Hit me up again soon, and we can dive into the trade and business side of things. See ya.
Okay.
I know it's a
Uh,
bummer.
how
Just
did
hit me.
how did how did ancient people protect wooden structure from damage? Miles, can you hear me? Miles, can you hear me? What happened going on? So Miles, my question is
Take it.
which civilization use wood the most?
You got it.
Yeah, give me
Buddhism
answer.
actually started in it started in India, but it really exploded under Emperor Ashoka in the 3rd century BCE. Then it spread all over Southeast Asia, and China ended up being a huge hub for it by the 500s.
You can tell me why it start from India?
It all goes back to Siddhartha Gautama, the guy who became the Buddha. He was a prince who basically walked away from everything, his palace, his wealth, uh, because he couldn't wrap his head around why people suffer. He spent years searching for a way to end that pain. And when he finally hit that moment of enlightenment under a Bodhi tree, the foundation for Buddhism was laid right there in the heart of India.
How was wood used in ancient warfare?
Wait, you're saying fear? Give me a
Yeah,
second to make sure I'm
war,
following. Are you asking how fear?
warfare.
Got it. That's a warfare. Okay. Now we're getting to the real human side of it. It's a bit of a paradox because while the goal was to reach fearlessness, the fear of death and violence was what actually pushed people toward the teachings. The biggest example is Emperor Ashoka. He basically tore through a war in Kalinga, saw the carnage he caused, and it absolutely broke him. That guilt and fear of continuing that cycle led him to pivot entirely to nonviolence, which then turned Buddhism into a state supported movement. I bet there's more to how those early edicts actually landed with the common people.
Why were wooden weapons common in all times?
Wooden weapons? That's a
Wooden weapons.
random pivot, but it mostly came down to what was around them. Wood was everywhere and way cheaper than metal, so it was the easiest way to gear up a huge group of people quickly. Plus, they used them a ton for training, basically the ancient version of sparring gear, so nobody accidentally took someone's head off with a real sword while practicing. There's even some cool stuff about how they'd heat treat the wood to make it harder.
How did carpentry become an important skills?
Carpentry was basically the ultimate survival skill back then. It wasn't just about building a chair, it was about shelter, ships, and tools. If you could work wood, you could basically build the entire infrastructure of a town. Think they had it as a trade or just something everyone had to know?
Okay, what kind of furnitures were made from wood?
Man, pretty much everything. Tables, chairs, beds, chests for storing clothes.
Tell me
Basically,
all.
if it
Okay.
wasn't stone or clay, it was probably. I mean, the list is basically endless. You had your dining tables, benches, and stools for sitting. For storage, they had big wooden trunks and wardrobes. They make everything from shelving units to bed frames and even the decorative panels on the walls. In some cultures, they even crafted intricate wooden thrones for the royals to actually make it feel official.
How did wood help in the development of art and culture?
It gave them a canvas. Wood is a lot more forgiving and easier to carve than stone, so people started getting really detailed with it. They'd carve stories, religious symbols, and patterns right into the furniture and buildings. It basically turned everyday objects into a way to tell a story or show off who you were. Plus, once you have the tools and the skill to make a beautiful chest or a temple, that expertise gets passed down, and suddenly you've got an entire tradition of craftsmanship that defines a culture's look.
What religious items were made from
Oh,
wood?
think of everything from simple prayer beads to massive temple doors. They'd carve idols and statues of deities, and in many cultures, the altars where they'd leave offerings were wooden. Even the boxes used to hold sacred scrolls or texts were often crafted from the finest wood they could find to show respect. I've heard that in some places they'd even use specific types of wood because they believed the tree itself had a spiritual connection.
How did wood shape village life?
It was the glue that held the place together. Everything from the houses and the fences to the plows they used in the fields was wood. It meant that the village wasn't just a place to live, but a constant workshop. People had to collaborate on things like raising a heavy beam for a new roof, which basically forced the community to work together just to survive. It turned the village into this network of people who all knew how to build and fix things on the fly
So, why were forests considered valuable resource?
because they were basically the hardware store and the pharmacy of the ancient world. If you didn't have a forest, you didn't have building materials, fuel for fire, or the plants and herbs people used for medicine. It was the ultimate resource for survival. I wonder if you've heard about how some ancient kings actually fought wars just to secure a specific type of timber for their navies.
So, how did people transport heavy wood in ancient times?
That was the real struggle. It took a massive amount of coordination and some pretty clever physics. Oh, they'd use rivers to float the logs downstream or build massive rafts to move them in bulk. On land, it was all about reducing friction. They'd use sleds and rollers, basically just smaller logs they'd roll the heavy ones over and let oxen or horses do the heavy lifting. In the winter, some people even made ice roads to slide those massive loads across. Imagine the sheer amount of work just to get one big beam across town.
What are some famous historical wooden structure?
There are some absolute legends out there. You got to check out the Horyuji Temple in Japan. It's basically the oldest wooden building in the world, dating back to 607 AD. The crazy part is they used interlocking joints instead of nails to hold the whole thing together. And you have the stave churches in Norway, which look like something out of a dark fairy tale with all these intricate carvings. And if you want to see scale, the Ubine Bridge in Myanmar is an absolute beast of a teak bridge with over 1,000 pillars. I wonder if you've heard about the Russian churches that were also built entirely without nails.
How did weather affect wooden buildings?
Weather was the biggest enemy. Humidity and rain just eat away at wood over time, leading to rot and mold. Then you've got termites and other pests that see a wooden house as a giant snack. To fight it, people got really creative. They treat the wood with oils, resins, or even burn the outside of the beams to make them more resistant to the weather. It basically became a constant battle just to keep the roof from caving in.
Why was wood preferred over stone in some regions?
It usually came down to what they had in their backyard. If you lived in a place with massive forests, wood was the obvious choice. But in regions with a lot of limestone or granite, like Egypt or Greece, stone was just way more practical. Plus, stone doesn't rot, doesn't burn, and it sends a much stronger message that this building is here forever, which is why you see all the big temples and tombs made of stone.
How did shipbuilding change civilization?
It basically opened up the world. Shipbuilding turned the ocean from a wall into a highway. Suddenly, you could trade things like spices, silk, and gold. with people you'd never even heard of, which pumped insane amounts of wealth into these early cities. With it didn't just move goods though; it moved ideas, religions, and technologies. It's how you get a cohesive civilization instead of just a bunch of isolated villages. I bet you've wondered how they actually navigated those early ships without any GPS.
What role did wood play in exploration and travel?
I'm guessing you mean the boat, right? It was everything.
Yeah.
Without a decent hull, you're just floating on a raft hoping for the best. The boat gave them a way to carry supplies, shelter people, and actually survive the open ocean. It turned exploration from a suicide mission into a real way to map the world.
How how did wood support ancient industries?
Wait, wood spot in C10? I'm not quite catching that part. Did you mean how wood sparked some specific industries or maybe something about the carbon industry?
I,
Help me out
I
here.
will say how did wood support ancient industries?
I think I'm still missing you a bit on the wood spot part. Are you talking about how wood sparked the start of certain industries or maybe how it played a role in early science and engineering?
Yeah.
Try me again. All right, let's roll with that. Wood was basically the prototype for everything. Before we had steel and plastic, wood was what people used to build the first complex machines. Think of the first gears, water wheels, and looms. It basically taught humans how to engineer things and solve problems, which laid the groundwork for the science of mechanics and manufacturing. I bet you're curious if they used wood for any of those early scientific instruments too.
What tools were used to cut and shape wood?
Early on, it was all about stone and bone. They had flint, axes, and scrapers to just hack through the stuff. Then once they hit the Bronze Age and eventually the Iron Age, things got way more precise with saws, chisels, and planes. It's a wild shift from just bashing a log into a shape to actually being able to carve a perfectly smooth joint.
How did wood help humans store food and water?
It was the original Tupperware. They'd make huge wooden barrels and vats for grain, oil, and wine. Since wood is naturally insulating, it actually helped keep things a bit more stable and temperature wise. For water, they'd carve out massive hollowed out logs or build wooden cisterns to hold it in place. It basically allowed people to stop
Uh,
worrying about where their next meal was coming from and start building actual cities.
Mike, I will give you word. You will complete this. Okay. Charcoal. What I will say this.
Sarko, I'm ready. What you got for me?
Can you say again?
Charcoal, what's the move?
Okay. Why was charcoal important in early civilization?
Because it was like the supercharged version of a regular fire. Regular wood burns fast and doesn't get nearly as hot, but charcoal burns way longer and at a much higher temperature. That was a total game changer for things like smelting metal. You, you can't really melt iron with a campfire, but with charcoal, you could actually forge tools and weapons, which basically pushed humanity into the Iron Age.
How did food influence early inventions?
Food was basically the main driver for almost every early invention. It started with the obvious stuff like knives and grinders for processing ingredients, but it got way more complex. To keep food from spoiling, people invented salt curing and fermentation. Then to grow more food, they had to invent irrigation systems and the plow. It's wild to
Uh,
think that our entire agricultural system was basically just one big attempt to figure out how to get a steady supply of calories without having to chase a mammoth all day.
what lesson can modern society learn from ancient wood usage?
I think the biggest takeaway is how they lived in total sync with their environment. They didn't just use wood, they understood it. They knew which tree was best for a ship and which one was best for a house. Modern society is all about forcing things to fit our needs, but the ancients were more about working with what they had. There's a real lesson there about sustainability and actually respecting the resources we use instead of just treating them as disposable.
Thank you everyone for joining our live discussion with Miles on wood, the backbone of early civilization. We learned how this natural resource shaped homes, tools, transportation, culture, and the growth of human societies. Wood was not just material, it was the foundation of progress for early humans. Do not forget to like, share, and follow for more educational and interesting discussion. See you in the next live session. Allah Hafiz.